Welcome into Locked On Phillies. In today's episode, the much-awaited outfield episode. What do the Philadelphia Phillies end up doing for outfield depth? Well, it seems like there's three options. I'll tell you what they are, and I'll rank them in likelihood of happening on today's Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Been talking Phillies baseball for years over on 97.5 The Fanatic on the radio. NBC Sports Philadelphia television side, credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member. Happy to be here with you as your host of Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. Okay. I'm going to flip around this hat here a little bit. You get to see my beautiful long hair that looks really dumb right now. It was just bothering me backwards. Sorry, that makes no sense to anyone not watching on YouTube. Today, we're going to get into the outfielder conversation. I know I've been saying this for a minute, but the Philadelphia Phillies, if they do have one weak spot right now, to me, it's the fact that they don't really have a bona fide backup outfielder after Matt Vierling got traded to Detroit in the Gregory Soto trade. They have a couple options currently in-house. They have the option of going out and adding somebody. So what exactly do they do? And these problems all go away once Bryce Harper is able to play the outfield again, because then your four outfielders at the major league level are Bryce Harper, Brandon Marsh, Nick Castellanos, and Kyle Schwarber. And you can survive with that and throw in an extra utility guy, like a lower level player even, guys like Dalton Guthrie, who was up with the team last year, guys like Jake Cave, who the team added this offseason. So there are options, but basically the three options that exist now, knowing that Harper is missing time this year and going into the season with what they currently have, are as follows. Here are the three options. Option number one, sign somebody through free agency. Go out, scour through the free agent outfielders that are still available across Major League Baseball, find one that you're willing to pay for, and go ahead and bring that player in, just like they did with Josh Harrison this past weekend for more infield depth. Do that for the outfield. That's option number one, just in order that I list them. I'll rank them here once I give you all the options. Another option that they have is go what you have in-house at the major league level, where you're looking at Dalton Guthrie or Jake Cave as one of your options, who are already looking like they could make the roster. They're proven major league players, maybe not to a high level, but you have experienced players already, a bit younger, a bit less talented than some of the options of free agency, but they're out, but they're already, like, you've already got them signed. They're already having major league experience. You've already got that under your belt, so you know that they at least have seen major league pitching before and have played in a major league outfield before. So that's option number two. Option number three would be the call-up, which would be options like calling up players on your 40-man roster that have not played in the major leagues to this point. Young prospects like Jalen Ortiz or Johan Rojas. And if those guys are options to make the major league roster as outfield depth pieces, chance for more talent there, but also the potential of guys coming up that aren't ready to play at the major league level. So what do I see as the more likely of the options, all things considered? I'll rank them right now for you, and then we're going to go ahead and dive in order deeper into the conversation for each of them. First of all, the ranking. I think the most likely option right now for the Philadelphia Phillies is that they use one of the guys with MLB experience already on their 40-man roster. Dalton Guthrie, Jake Cave. One of those two names is probably going to be on your opening day roster as an outfield depth piece. Now, which one it is, I really don't know. Honestly, that could be a coin flip. Jake Cave has the more extensive experience at the major league level. Dalton Guthrie seems to be a guy that the organization really likes. The bottom line is neither of them are anything super special at the major league level right now. They don't really have to be, though. I think if you're going to bring a guy in as outfield depth, though, you'd want the guy that is better defensively, which Jake Cave always to me seemed like more of an offensive outfielder. Dalton Guthrie is a guy who probably plays a little bit better defense in the corners, which is where he's most likely needed to fill in for Nick Castellanos and fill in for Kyle Schwarber. So Guthrie seems to be the guy that I think is most likely to end up in that role if they don't add somebody. And I think the more likely thing out of the three options is that they don't add somebody. The second most likely is signing a free agent, going out and getting somebody like, well, I'll give you the names when we break that down. I don't want to ruin the surprise of a couple guys I like, but there are two guys out there that I think still would fit very well with the Philadelphia Phillies. And I think they'd be willing to go out and pay if the price point was right. So I think free agent is the second most likely. And I think the least likely of the three options is bringing up one of those players from the minors and jumping Jake Cave and jumping Dalton Guthrie and going with a Johan Rojas or a Jalen Ortiz. I really don't see that as likely. I see them as given more time to develop in the minors before they're ready to get a call up and anything like that. So that's my ranking. Let's dive a little bit deeper now into the first option, which is going with either Jake Cave or Dalton Guthrie. And here's why I think that's the first option. First of all, with Josh Harrison signing, the Philadelphia Phillies look like they've just pushed themselves into the second luxury tax threshold. That's big time spending. Last year was the first time they went into the luxury threshold at all. They passed the luxury cap at all. And now they're going past the second level of it. At that point, whatever, you're already eating a bunch of taxes. You might as well just go ahead and sign who you need to be competitive. And shout out to John Middleton again for being willing to do that. But that to me says they're going to be even less likely to spend more on another free agent and who they have in house. The other thing we've got to remember is a temporary replacement. If Bryce Harper didn't exist, if he wasn't on this team, or let's say he did, but Brandon Marsh didn't, or Kyle Schwarber didn't, or Nick Castellanos didn't, remove one of the four legs of that stool, I guess you would call it. And yeah, you'd have to go out and get somebody. You'd have to pay. They'd probably be feeling a lot more pressure to go do that. But the fact of the matter is, you have to last until the All-Star break before you have Bryce Harper back as a designated hitter, and then maybe another month until he could probably play the outfield again. So at some point, that help is coming. He does exist. He's going to play the field at some point this year, and that takes away all of these problems. So do you really want to go commit a free agent contract, another free agent contract, a one-year deal to a guy that in 4 months worth time of the season is not going to be playing anymore and is going to be your fifth outfielder as opposed to the fourth outfielder they would probably be if you brought in some of the guys that I'm looking at? No, I don't really see that as a likely scenario. Well, not likely. It's possible. I don't see that as the number one option. I think it's much more likely that you keep Dalton Guthrie waiting in the wings, that you keep Jake Cave waiting in the wings, probably more likely Lehigh for him. And if anything goes wrong injury-wise, well, you're just going to have to cover up for one of those guys. I know I talked about with Cody Clemens when he first came to the Phillies as part of that Gregory Soto trade. And you miss Nick Maton. And it was like, well, Cody Clemens isn't ready to play at the major league level. Listen, I get it. But if Cody Clemens is a guy in a lineup that contains Rhys Hoskins and Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos and JT Realmuto and Alec Boehm and Bryson Stott and Brandon Marsh and all these guys that can hit the cover off the ball, you can cover up for one player that's a minus hitter because everyone else in that lineup is a plus hitter. They really are. Basically everybody you have is above average offensively, maybe with the exceptions of Brandon Marsh and Bryson Stott, both really young players who could take a huge jump this offseason and be ready to go to be plus at their positions offensively. They showed signs last year. So, yeah, you could cover for a guy like if Dalton Guthrie comes in for a Kyle Schwarber, you could cover for him for a month's worth of the season and make up for it. It's not ideal, but it wouldn't sink you because of the talent of the rest of the roster. So I absolutely see that as the most likely of the three options, that the Philadelphia Phillies are just going to go ahead and, hey, stick with what they have already, run with that, and get to when Bryce Harper comes back, hopefully with as little injury and as little missed time from your starters as possible. And then you mix in Bryce Harper when he's able to throw the baseball again. Again, I told you, number two, go out and get some free agents. And coming up, I'm going to tell you the two top guys that I'm still looking at that I want on this darn team if they're going to go out and sign a free agent. We'll discuss coming up next as we continue Locked On Phillies. All right, this year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number one sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no sweat first bet. Isn't that catchy? No sweat first bet. You get up to $3,000, $3,000 in free bets back in free bonus bets, rather, if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. I saw something on FanDuel today. You could bet the Kelsey brothers, Jason and Travis Kelsey, plus 15,000 to each score a touchdown. Now, considering Jason Kelsey plays center for your birds, I wouldn't advise doing that, but that just shows you FanDuel's got everything. FanDuel lets you bet on everything whatsoever. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/locked-on to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's talk outfield free agents because there are some interesting names still out there available and a couple that I think would fit very, very well with the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, there are names out there like David Peralta, but he's 35. I don't really want a 35-year-old outfielder coming in. Jerkson Profar, who was with San Diego last year, but his market value, according to Spotrac, has like $14 million. They're not paying that for a backup outfielder. A couple other interesting names. I don't know, Cole Calhoun, Robbie Grossman. Here are the names that I'm really looking at as realistic options for the Philadelphia Phillies that I think would fit well with this team. The first one, he was with a division rival last year, and his name is Tyler Naquin. Lefty bat, which would be nice. You already have two of those in the outfield with Brandon Marsh and Kyle Schwarber. You can never have too many lefties, though. And Tyler Naquin, his last year's salary, you were looking at $4 million. $4 million. That's palatable, especially for a player that has a lot of starting experience, can play plus defense, got great speed. You remember him for sure for his time in Cleveland with that walk-off inside the park home run. They threw up the rock on symbol after he scored a touchdown. Sorry, I'm still in football mode. Forgive me. Scored to win the game. He's an electric type player at points. Now, when you look at his numbers, he's not exactly giving you the most offensively, but he's a career 264 hitter. He's hit 61 home runs at the major league level last season with the Mets, and he went to the Mets, of course, at the trade deadline. He was with Cincinnati, but with the Mets, he only batted 203 to end that season. So you're not really getting a lot from him offensively, but you're getting more from him than the next guy I'm going to bring up. And he's a younger player than the other guy I'm looking at. When you look at Tyler Naquin, 31 years old. So it's kind of right in the sweet spot of a guy that has major league experience. He's not going to cost you all that much because he's not going to add all that much. And honestly, I was just telling you how he batted 204 with the Mets after he got traded at the deadline to go over there to play for that contender. Brings his value down even more. The Phillies might be able to get him for 3.5 on a one-year deal, maybe 4 even on a one-year deal. That wouldn't break the bank. I think that would be an interesting fit to have Tyler Naquin here. The other guy I'm looking at is Jackie Bradley Jr. Jackie Bradley Jr. is, I love guys. It's the Josh Harrison move. It really is. I love guys that have played for winners, that have performed on the biggest stages. Jackie Bradley Jr., I believe, has an ALCS MVP award from his time with the Boston Red Sox in the run back in 2018. Now, he's 32, turning 33 here in just a little bit of time. So it's not exactly like he's a spring chicken, but his base salary in 2022 was $700,000. You could get him for $1 million. You could get him for less than you got what you got Josh Harrison for. Now, he brings you less than what Tyler Naquin would bring you. Here's Jackie Bradley's career numbers. He's a career 227 hitter. In 2022, he batted 203 for the whole year. Remember, Naquin only did that in New York with the Mets. He was batting over 240 when he was with the Reds to start last season. And Jackie Bradley Jr., while being a plus defender in his prime, he's lost a step. That's what happens when you clear 30 and you get into that age range where you're looking at 32 plus, going to be 33 years of age. So also a lefty bat, though. So both these guys are lefties. I really do like adding that into the lineup and having that as an option. Another lefty bat coming off the bench is nice. So, yeah, cheaper option, but a guy that's been in big spots as opposed to Tyler Naquin, who hasn't really been in the big playoff spots in his career, but he's a more productive player, a slightly younger player, probably got a little bit more left in the legs, going to cost you probably about $2 to $3 million more. Those are the two guys I'm looking at when it comes to, free agents that the Philadelphia Phillies could sign as outfield depth. Maybe you like somebody else out there. So if you do, let me know in the comments. Jump in down there and tell me what you're thinking. But as far as free agents it goes, and to rank those guys, I'd probably go Jackie Bradley Jr. 1 over Tyler Naquin. I know why you're saying why the less productive player. Because what I was saying, I don't see the Phillies committing significant money to a backup outfielder spot, knowing Bryce Harper's coming back. So that extra $2.5, $3.5 million that you're going to save by going with Jackie Bradley Jr. instead of Tyler Naquin seems to make more sense. But I don't know. I take either of those guys. Those are my two top options. Again, if you like somebody else, jump in the comments. But everyone else either seems to be not as proven as those two players that's available or significantly more expensive. And I don't see the Phillies committing any more money than what they'd have to pay for a player like Naquin. So don't even talk to me about guys that are going to cost you more than $5 million a year. It's unrealistic. And that's why the top most realistic option is just to stick with either Dalton Guthrie or Jake Cave, who are currently with your team and have major league experience. Now, let's talk briefly. It's going to be briefly about those minor league options. I mean, Simone Muzzioti's down there, Jalen Ortiz, Johan Rojas. I don't see any of those guys as ready to compete and contribute with a contender. I just don't. They're too far away from being at that point. And it goes back to the conversation we have about Andrew Painter. Now, Andrew Painter is a next level, otherworldly talent, the best pitching prospect in baseball. He will pitch at the major league level this year. He will. That is a Connor Thomas guarantee. Short of, and I'm knocking on wood, short of injury, Andrew Painter will be pitching in a Philadelphia Phillies uniform at the major league level at some point in 2023. I can't say the same for Jalen Ortiz or Johan Rojas because they're not as talented of prospects, and you're also not in a rush to bring them up. Like, if you don't do anything, it's not like this team is going to live and die by the backup outfielder spot, because by the time you're playing games that matter, your backup outfielder could be Nick Castellanos, could be Kyle Schwarber, and those guys will probably be DHing whoever ends up coming out of the outfield when Bryce Harper can play the field. But you've got such great options out there that you're not going to have to worry about whoever's your fourth or fifth option at that point in the outfield. And the farm system, you need to continue to develop it. To make a deadline trade, those would be guys that would be interesting to see what you could fetch for them at the deadline if you need to go ahead and get bullpen help. If maybe one of your starters, like let's say Taijuan Walker, is not having a good year and you need a better starter. Let's say that Andrew Painter isn't totally ready for the major league level and he comes up and struggles a little bit and you say, okay, well, screw it. We're going to go trade a prospect and one of the players off our bench and we're going to go get a guy who's in all-star contention this year as a starter and really beef up our rotation, or get another bullpen piece, or get another bat off the bench that you're going to be able to use, someone that can DH at points, your Matt Stairs move. Well, those are prospects that you could potentially move in that trade. And also, let's say you don't move them, but you don't want to totally leave the farm system bare of guys that can come up and be developed. Because let's be honest, Nick Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber, they're in the middle of their careers right now. They're in their primes of their careers, and they probably have a good 4 or 5 years left before they're really, really on the backside of what they're able to do, especially since they're both not plus defenders. So having another option to call up to be an outfielder of the future is an attractive thing as well. So that's why I think Jalen Ortiz and Johan Rojas both going to be staying down this season. And at some point in the future, we could see him in Phillies pinstripes. So that's why that's the third most likely option. There you have it. It's your breakdown of the outfield position that I feel like I've been promising for like a month. Sorry it took so long, but a lot of stuff going on that we had to get into in addition to that. Coming up next, it's time for Off the Poll Part 2, where I tell you about what happened with our very interesting results to the What Jersey Would You Eliminate story from yesterday's episode. We had the Twitter poll up, and there were a lot of close contenders. We'll discuss on Off the Poll, segment where we talk about our Twitter poll from yesterday's episode as we wrap up Locked On Phillies. Okay, so we do have a winner in today's Off the Poll, but it was close. And for a second, I thought we were going to have a 2 or maybe even 3-way tie for the top option for uniform that you'd get rid of. Just a reminder, Nike is restricting teams to 4 uniforms per side. this year. And the Phillies wore 5 last year. They wore their regular red pinstripes. They wore their solid red getaway days, their gray away jersey, their cream jerseys, and their powder blue throwbacks. So restricting anyone from choosing the red pinstripes because you know they're not getting rid of that. That's the vintage Philadelphia Phillies look. I put out the poll at at LO_Phillies on Twitter. Which Phillies uniform would you choose to remove if you had to pick one? And the options were powder blues, solid red, cream, and gray aways. Rightfully so, my favorite jersey that the Philadelphia Phillies wear, the powder blues, only got 11% of the vote. That was the lowest total for any of these. So they're bringing up the rear. No one wants to get rid of the powder blues. Thank goodness you guys are all smart like me and understand a good uniform when you see one. But the solid red, cream, and gray aways all at one point held the lead in this poll and all finished relatively close to each other. 27% of responders said the cream jerseys can go. That was the next lowest of the powder blues at 11. So clearly the powder blues are the favorite of those jerseys. But 27% of the responders were saying cream can go. 28% said the gray aways can go. So only 1% difference between those. And 34% picked the winner for the removed jersey, the solid red. To me, I would go ahead and also get rid of the solid red. That seems the more likely to go. It looks like a batting practice top to me. I know I gave the whole argument the other episode of like if you have a jersey, if you're a family or a person who doesn't really like to splurge for the real bona fide jerseys and you get the jersey, it makes you look like you're wearing what they wear with the red getaway tops. It's most likely for the jersey, so that's got to be a cool thing for kids. You don't normally see their favorite player wearing the exact jersey that they have on or a similar shirt to the one that they're wearing, but I mean, the benefits in there. The solid red I never totally enjoyed. Again, it looks like spring training to me. It looks a little bit, uh, just not as polished as the other options, and maybe because it's not a full button all the way down. But yeah, I go ahead and I like the solid reds to be the ones to get rid of. The gray aways, I mean, you kind of got to keep them because they're your away jersey. And the cream, I do like them as an alternate. Not as much as the powder blues, but frankly, I probably would have broken down this poll the exact same way that it came out. I would have had the cream a little bit lower because I do think those are very likely to stay. I love those jerseys. And then the gray aways and solid red would have been close for me, but red would have won out. So, hey, good call by all you out there. And it's very interesting how close everything was. Everyone has their favorite jersey. That's just proof positive that it's hard for the Philadelphia Phillies to pick which one they would eliminate, which is why it's dumb that Nike is making major league teams do this. But hey, baseball and not getting out of their own way, something that goes hand in hand. Well, hey, that was a fun off the poll. And this is a fun episode. That's all for today's Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB Prospects. Lindsey Crosby does great work covering prospects. There's a lot of new news about the new rankings and everything out and heading into spring training and who's getting roster invites and non-roster invites. So go ahead and check out Lindsey Crosby's work on Locked On MLB Prospects, one of the best shows we have running, besides, of course, your Locked On Phillies, and give him your second listen of the day. But that's it for Locked On Phillies. Make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing. Everywhere you get your podcast, you can find us, YouTube, Odyssey app, Spotify, Apple Music, all that good stuff. Go ahead and check us all out. And, please hit that subscribe button, rate, review. It helps me out significantly. I really appreciate it. And I will talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.